Now, you don't hear it very much in the corporate media, but the budget bill that the Republicans passed through the House and Senate and Donald Trump signed that set the table for this tax legislation that is this tax scam that is being worked out between Republicans in the House, Republicans in the Senate, and the billionaires who own them all. You won't hear a great deal about it, but it includes a $1 trillion cut to Medicaid and a $500 billion cut to Medicare. So how do you get people to stop using Medicaid and Medicare if you're going to cut the funding for it? You can't just start saying to doctors, sorry, we're only going to pay you 20% of what we used to pay you, or 80%, or whatever it may be. I mean, you could, but you might as well not have a system. So what do? Well, the Republicans have got an answer to that, too. I mean, you have to admit, these guys, they're slick. They put a lot of thought into this stuff. You know, they want to make sure that the donor class is not paying for your health care if you happen to be working for $7.50 an hour someplace and are making so little, even though you're working full time, that you qualify for Medicaid. They want to make sure that you can no longer get that Medicaid. So, you know, because Medicaid is paid for out of the federal coffers, and federal coffers are replenished in part by taxes from billionaires and big corporations. And billionaires and big corporations, they want to keep all that money in Bermuda. They don't want that money messing around here. So, you know, very straightforward process. How do we get people to stop using Medicaid? Because we're going to cut $1 billion, excuse me, $1 trillion, $1,000 billion out of Medicaid. So how do we get people to stop using it? Again, this is all predicated on the foundational notion that Republicans have that health care is not a right, it is a privilege. It's a privilege that you must earn. And you earn it by becoming wealthy, because that's the only metric that is important. Being a good person, not important. Being a decent parent, not important. Being a good son or daughter, not important. Being wealthy, oh yeah. That gets the GOP going. So you've got the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. It's called CMS. This is the government agency inside, I believe it's part of HHS, that administers Medicare and Medicaid. And the woman in charge of this, her name is Seema Verma. And last week, she made a rather shocking, in fact, it's been called twisted and absolutely awful by healthcare experts, a shocking suggestion. Not just a suggestion, this is actually an action. Verma, this from Common Dreams by Jessica Corbett, staff writer. The headline, in Twisted Push, Trump administration encourages states to impose work requirements for Medicaid. Now, keep in mind, the vast majority of people on Medicaid fall into three categories. They are people working, usually full-time, for very low pay. They're making so little that they qualify for Medicaid. So they're already working. They are elderly people who are in nursing homes, and rather than their children and grandchildren paying for their nursing care, Medicaid pays for it. The Republicans would much rather, hey, these middle-class families, they got some wealth. They still own houses. You know, there's money here we can extract from these people. So you've got, you know, the elderly people, and then you've got children. Children and single moms. And that's that, but a large cohort of children. So this is who's getting Medicaid right now, and this is who Seema Verma says should now have to fulfill the work requirement before they get Medicaid. Quote, Verma vowed to fast-track approvals of states' proposals, now presumably these are red states, states' proposals for amending how they implement Medicaid and denounced the Obama administration's rejection of work requirements for Medicaid recipients, promising to, quote, approve proposals that promote community engagement activities, end quote. Now, what the hell does that mean? Well, she says what that means is, quote, working, volunteering, going to school, or obtaining job training. In other words, you have to earn your health. Remember, I said, you know, Republicans don't think health care is a right, it's a privilege. According to Kaiser Family Foundation, this was published in February, the Kaiser Family Foundation analysis. Among able-bodied individuals under the age of 65 and enrolled in Medicaid in 2015, 59% were working, 78% were in families with at least one person working. Despite that, the following states have notified the Trump administration that they would like to start requiring people in their states to work before they become eligible for Medicaid. The states are, and you may want to, if you live in one of these states, you might want to have a quick conversation with your state senator or your state representative or your state assembly person or whatever it is in your particular state. Arizona, Arkansas, Indiana, Kentucky, New Hampshire, Maine, Utah, and Wisconsin. Now, I might be wrong, but I believe every single one of those states is entirely or largely controlled by Republicans. And what the states have submitted these waivers to do is you know, four major things. Base the eligibility on drug screening. You got to pee in a cup if you want to have health care. Impose premiums on people with incomes below the poverty line. So even if you're poor, you're going to have to start paying for your Medicaid. Impose a time limit on how long people can be enrolled in Medicaid. Oh, that factory that left your you know, West Virginia town there hasn't come back. There's no more work. But tough. You've been on Medicaid for 2 years. You can't have it anymore. No, I know there's no more factories. There's no, but, you know, it's just tough luck. You weren't born rich. And refuse coverage to people who don't submit renewal paperwork on time or don't report employment or income changes within 10 days. So under these new rules that the Trump administration is proposing, if you get a raise and you fail to notify the Medicaid people, you've committed a crime. You're now engaged in Medicaid fraud. You can go to jail if you don't tell them within 10 days of your raise or any other change in your employment status. Now, odds are they won't send you to jail. They'll simply say, you're no longer eligible for Medicaid. You can't have it, ever. Sorry, tough luck. And this is part of the strategy that the Republican Party is using to be able to get enough people off Medicaid that $1 trillion over a decade, $100 billion a year, $1 trillion cut to Medicaid won't be noticed because people aren't eligible for the benefit anyway. Because, oh, last year you must have smoked a joint of pot. Or, oh, you know, last month you actually got a 10-cent an hour raise and you didn't notify us. You're no longer eligible for Medicaid. I mean, this is craziness. And this is part of this war on working people that the Republican Party declared in 1981 with the election of Ronald Reagan when he was sworn in January 20th, 1981. And the first thing he did was bust up the Professional Air Traffic Controllers Organization Union, the PATCO union. First thing he did. And that war on working people continues to this day. I've got another story on that out of Puerto Rico that's pretty shocking. We'll share with you right after that.